Building your first $100,000 is a grind, but you have to do it. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of the late, great Charlie Munger. Well, maybe not exactly. I think my version was cleaned up just slightly. But I remember back in the day, before I hit that threshold that Charlie often talked about, I used to see people that were successful, and I would wonder, what's going on behind the scenes? How did you actually get to that point? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be going over why $100,000 is the hardest money for you to make, and how once you actually cross that threshold, how your whole investment journey completely changes. When you're first starting out with $0 and you have that overall goal of crossing that six-figure milestone, you're starting at the bottom of the hill. And in order to actually get some traction, you have to actually get there mostly by brute force and your overall savings rate. So right out of the gate, one of the main things that you have to do, and this is one of the things that prevents most people from actually starting to see some financial success, is you have to actually take a look at your money and where you're spending it, and you have to dramatically slash it across the board. So when people hear that, they don't want to change their lifestyle. They don't want to get rid of the $800 a month car payment, the $3,500 a month high-rise apartment in the city, because they are accustomed to a certain lifestyle. But in order to actually get to that first $100,000, you have to make drastic life changes. And the very first thing would be is if you have a car payment, you have to get rid of it. I know I lost so many people right there with that concept because we love our cars. And for a lot of people, it's what defines them. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a car guy. Those of you that have watched my content in the past know that I'm a car guy. But in order to see some progress, you have to make some of these drastic changes. A lot of people also have a lot of bleeding that comes from their account, and I call that death by 1,000 cuts. So death by 1,000 cuts would be, you've got a Netflix subscription, you've got a Hulu subscription, you pay for an Apple One subscription, you have a gym membership, your whole life is on subscriptions. And while some people may say, hey man, these are the things that I need to get me through the day. I work hard and I want to be able to enjoy some of the things that make me happy whenever I'm not working. And I get it, I understand. But when you're starting at $0, and remember, you're pushing that boulder up the hill. And at the very beginning, it's going to be extremely hard to start making it up that mountain, that hill. And you have to make sure that you're getting rid of all the things that are preventing you from making momentum. Because when we have these small things coming out of our account every single month, we don't notice it. And at the end of the month, whenever we're trying to struggle to understand where all our money went, that's where the death by 1,000 cuts analogy comes from. The next thing that we're going to take a look at is, are you going to the bar or the club? Are you traveling? Are you buying clothes? Are you going out to eat a lot? These are some of the other things that you have to actually put on the back burner if you want to get to your first six figures. I already lost so many people when I talked about potentially getting rid of the car in order to achieve your goal. And I'm going to lose a lot more people when I talk about the vacations, the going out to eat, the buying clothes, etc. These are all in that same category of things that prevent you from getting to where you want to be. And the way that you have to kind of think about this, think about it from this perspective. The things that you're doing today are temporary and they're going to pay major dividends in the future. So instead of spending your money and experiencing that death by 1,000 cuts that we just talked about, you could take $10,000 a year, which is roughly $833 a month, give or take. And if you invest that in the market and you get an 8% return, and a lot of people will say that the market generally returns between 8 and 12%. So we're going to use 8% to be extremely conservative, that it would take you 7.8 years to get to your first $100,000. Now, for a lot of people, that seems like an eternity. That seems like an extremely long time to stay down in order to actually hit that $100,000 threshold that so many people talk about. But this is also a time where a lot of people actually hit that wall and a lot of people fail, because what ends up happening is you come out of the gate strong. You've got your plan. You're focused. You're 2, 3, 4 months in. You're investing every single month. You're starting to see your account start to grow a little bit. And then something happens. It gets really boring and you start to miss your old life. So you used to be able to travel, go out of town every now and then, go hang out at the club. You know, you're used to buying new shoes or new clothes, and you're not doing that anymore, right? Because you were using that brute force, your savings rate at this point, in order to get to that $100,000. And what happens with a lot of people is they start to think about all the things that they're missing out on. They know that it's going to take them roughly about 8 years to get to that $100,000 mark. And it seems like so far away, and you get frustrated and then they quit. And that's why I always say that building wealth is a slow process, especially in the beginning. And that's when most people get frustrated and end up giving up and quitting right before they have a breakthrough. Another thing that happens at this stage, that you're locked in and you're focused and you're starting to get raises and promotions at work. You're starting to make more money than you ever have in your life. It may not be life-changing money, but it's more money. And then what often starts to happen is lifestyle creep starts to settle in. Look, I talk about these things because I've actually experienced this, right? You get the new job, you get the promotion, so you got to get a new car, right? Because you're making more money. So now you can go out and get rid of that car that was perfectly fine. And then you have to get the new house because the house has to match your current salary, right? You're making more money, so you should be able to live better. You start taking better trips. You start going out to better restaurants, and the list goes on. And these things that may not seem like that big of a deal, especially when you're in the moment and you're enjoying those things, are the things that are keeping you from hitting that number much faster than you could. And then the last thing that causes issues here at this point is that's when you start trying to take shortcuts. You might hear about this stock tip that somebody gave you at the water cooler that's a can't miss. So you got to put money into that. You've got this startup or this business that everybody tells you that can't fail. You invest money into that and then it fails. So once you break away from the plan that you set out from the beginning and you try to take shortcuts, that's when things start to go sideways. And then once you have that one bad investment, or you try to open that business and it doesn't go the way that you thought it was going to go, then all of a sudden you start questioning the plan. And then you start to wonder to yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth all of this to get to a point that you are now doubting that you can actually make it to? But the people that actually stick with it and actually make it to that $100,000 mark, that's when the payoff comes. To get to that first 100,000, 7.8 years. To get to the $200,000 mark, which is an additional 100,000, that takes 3.7 years. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize, that once you get to a certain amount of money that's able to compound annually, it really starts to speed up your wealth building process. And then to go from 200,000 to 300,000, 2.6 years. Right? And this is the same $10,000 that you're investing at an 8% annualized return. And they go from 300,000 to 400,000, 2.1 years. So you see how drastically different your wealth building process becomes once you actually get in the game and get to that threshold and let your money start to work for you. I previously made a video about how compound interest was the eighth wonder of the world. And this right here illustrates exactly why. And for so many people that stick with it, right? They stick with the plan and they have that aha moment because they can see that $100,000 mark on the horizon. The finish line is just right there. And they actually pass it. And they continue to do the activities that they did to get to that point, your whole perspective on everything changes, right? You can travel more if you want, but a lot of times people don't spend their money on the things that they used to because this isn't a quick fix, right? This is a lifestyle change that you'll go through in order to get to this point. You know how hard it was to get there. And now you understand that the value of that money that you used to just go and buy a bottle of liquor at the club or buy a section or buy clothes, it's not worth it anymore because you start to see that money going out and all you can see is compounding interest on that first $100,000 that you made. Now, look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that getting to that first $100,000 milestone is going to be easy. It is going to be one of the hardest things that you'll ever have to work on to achieve because there's so many things out there that are competing for your time, attention, and your resources. But if you could stay focused and lock in, there's no doubt that you can actually make it to this point. And once you do, then you realize, look, it took me X amount of years to get to 100,000. How much more time is it going to take me to double that, right? And then to get to 300,000, then to 400,000 and beyond. If you're ready to lock in and use that brute force that we talked about at the beginning of this video, and you're ready to go through and you're ready to cut out 90% of the things that you're wasting your money on because you have a bigger purpose, then just keep your head down, keep grinding, you'll reach your financial destination. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.